Well, good morning, everyone. It is January 14th, 2014. This will be our first show back live this year as we took a little break over the holiday season. And then last year, due to all of the weather problems out in the Northeast, the radio station ended up offline for a little bit. So back at it and very excited this morning. Just a couple things before we get into our topic today. Join us tonight at 11 o'clock for our After Dark show where we play a couple rounds of Conflicted, where we talk out scenarios in downgrade situations. Just throw some stuff out there and see what everyone would think. It's a round table situation. Our special guest tonight, is Princess with a Gun, and she will be with us from the SHOT Show in Vegas. So hopefully we can make a connection with her. And then also with us tonight is P2T, Plan, Prepare, and Train, and you can find them both on Facebook if you follow us. I'll put their links up later tonight as soon as I get home from work today. But heads up, we're expecting another polar vortex, as they call it this year. It's supposed to head south out of Canada, not quite as far south as the one last week. But in Canada, they are expecting some negative 40 to negative 50 degree temperatures, and that does not include wind chill. Also, heads up, if you're downriver from West Virginia on the Ohio River, I know Cincinnati is going to turn off their intake valves off the Ohio River for this chemical spill that we've been tracking. So please, we've talked about it in the past. A lot of people plan on getting any kind of water preps they need from the river because they think it's an unlimited supply. But we've also talked about how those things can be dammed upriver, and how chemical contamination can kind of put a kink in your plans. So always have backups to your backups to your backups. Don't rely on any one source for anything that you do, anything that you prep. This is a perfect example of that. It's funny, now is the perfect time if you've got friends and relatives, those that you care about that are not into preparedness. We've had a couple perfect examples of why an open door, you can start talking to them about maybe having a couple extra supplies on hand just in case they need it. Between the snow, the ice, the cold, getting into now this water contamination of an entire river where we've seen over 300,000 people without water, and the panic that ensues because of that. Please use this time, use these issues, and start talking to your friends and family to get them a little more prepared. So let's get into today's show. I'm really excited about this. If you've been following me for a while, you have heard me talk about some issues that I'm having with the public school system here in Indianapolis. And I'm not going to name out the one specifically. Our youngest son, he is 13. We've been having some issues with what's going on with him. And so I've been flirting with the issue of pulling him out of the school system and homeschooling him. I don't like the fact that my rights as a parent seem to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's to the point at this time, to me, it seems like as a parent, the school seems to think they have more control over your child than you do, any rights over your child than you do. So I've been, flirting with this issue and called upon a good friend of mine. I've known Tracy for, a long time, let's just say. Let's put it out there.
Like 20-some years.
20-some years. Well, so welcome, Tracy, to the show. You run Hall of Fame Moms in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And you seem to be out of all my friends, you probably are the most educated on homeschooling and the most public about it. So welcome to the show this morning.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm excited because you're a plethora of information.
Thank you.
Yes, Tracy and I've known each other for a very long time. We actually kind of lived together in the same area in Ohio. We both moved away and began our family life and all of that loveliness, but we've stayed in touch kind of over the years. And
thanks to Facebook, huh?
Yeah, no doubt. But now I want to get into, because you homeschool your children.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing that?
We're in the middle of our 4th year right now.
And how old are your boys?
9 and 7. So I have a 4th grader and a 2nd grader. And we've been doing this since my oldest, Brendan, spent 1 year in public school. He was in kindergarten. And it was during that year that I just started to see things differently because I was not a homeschool fan. And so it was a real turnaround for me to leave that, that mindset of having my son in whatever they call it, traditional or conventional schooling. You know what I mean? And,
right.
It was not an easy decision because I was not totally on the homeschooling bandwagon before that. So
what kind of scared you about going into homeschooling? Because I know what scares me, but I'm curious now that you look at it, what kind of issues did you have with it?
Well, you know what? I think it's what probably most parents in America, as an American, I would say that, have. And I think it's just that brainwashed mentality that this is how it's always been done. Well, it's how it's been done in our lifetime, but it's not how it's always been done through history to send our kids to a state school. And the crazy thing is, and I say it's crazy, and it's just this like brainwashed mentality because, I spent, most of my years in school were spent at private Christian schools, and then I graduated from a public high school, and I went to work my way through college, doing Christian and secular, different colleges or university, and so then and then I even was a substitute teacher. And even though I'm not a certified teacher, my degree is in educational ministry and psychology from Liberty University. But I was a preschool teacher. I worked in daycare and latchkey, and I did substitute teaching in Canton City schools. And when I finally had my my son, for some reason I felt like I needed to send him to preschool to prepare him for being socialized and knowing his basics for kindergarten instead of teaching him myself,
But that's what they tell us we need to do. And there are some schools that will not take a child unless they've gone to some kind of pre-education.
Yeah, and teaching and facing the possibility of teaching my son how to read was one of the scariest things for me to do. Well, like I said, I thought this is just the way it was, and I thought, and I understand this. Moms would like to have have time to themselves. So yes, send my kid to school. I can't wait. Then I've got this much of the day. I can get things done without kids underfoot. So, we sent him to preschool. He was in it for like 9 months, and then he went on to kindergarten, and it was just, I saw things. Negative things in the preschool environment, and not that it was bad teaching or that, but I mean, in a sense, what I was seeing is that he'd come home using bad language that he was picking up there. That wasn't even the worst of it, but I can't go into all kinds of details. But, and then in public school in our area, it was, all day, every day kindergarten. So 5 days a week from like 9 to 2:30, he's in school, and I would get complaints from the teacher or the staff, and not that they're not good people. I mean, I don't have anything, any complaints on the education of that, but just saying, he's not listening, he's talking, he's this, he's that,
but he's 6,
No, he was 5.
He was 5.
5, yeah, he was a 5-year-old, boy, and I think most of us probably know, boys don't mature as quickly as girls, and that's what I've been told anyways. I mean, I've got 3 brothers and 5 sisters, so my mom's, had a lot of experience with kids, but to expect a kid to sit through a day and not be chatty and the thing is, one thing I kept dealing with is, I'm not there. I can't correct his behavior. I'm finding out about it at the end of the day, and it took.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
He's long forgotten about what he's done at school.
Yeah. And, I remember one time, I told him, I warned him, whatever it was, you need to obey, you can't talk, or you need whatever, or I'm going to take away your markers and your crayons or whatever. And one night he was saying his prayers, and he was praying that he would, whatever it was he needed to do, that he would do it so mommy wouldn't take away his crayons and his markers,
Yeah.
So it was cute, but it took quite a bit. It took months for me. Finally, I remember telling him, we might have to homeschool you. And just those words that come out of my mouth, I didn't even believe them completely. It was kind of a threat.
Yeah, and it sounds like such a bad thing. Oh my goodness, you're not behaving, so we're going to have to homeschool you because you can't behave in public.
And it wasn't even bad stuff. It was just an immature, child, just child stuff, it wasn't like he was being bad. So, but you know what, all in all, I just see that that's just what the Lord used to open my eyes that this isn't really the best environment. And it wasn't just that. I mean, I could go through a list of reasons why I think homeschooling is better. And I'm not saying it's a choice for everybody, because truly not every home. I mean, there's a lot of just bad homes out there. We know that. Kids get abused. Kids are neglected. There's a lot of bad stuff where kids actually going away to school is a safe haven probably for them. You know what I mean? And that's just really sad. But I think for a lot of people, then I think there's also parents who aren't homeschooling that probably should, because their kids are being bullied. And,
you brought up a good point just a few moments ago. And, as a parent that, my youngest is now 13 and my kids have all been in public school. And quite honestly, this is the first year we've had any issues, with anything that we've had to, but school has changed over the years. It's not quite the same as it was 20 years ago. But you bring up a good point. As a parent who has a child in public school, one of the fears that they try and instill in us about homeschooling is the lack of, socialization that your child will receive when they're homeschooled. But you bring up a good point. When our kids go off to school, there's, let's say between 25, 30, sometimes 35 kids in a classroom with one teacher, with maybe an aide with that teacher, and that's it. Our kids are pretty much left unattended, in my opinion, in their ability to socialize with other kids in the class. So like you said, your son was coming home learning swear words and who knows what else. And we are concerned as parents with the fact of how our children are learning about sex younger and younger and younger, but we put them in an environment where they are pretty much unattended and they can do whatever they want to with one person there that's supposed to oversee them. What is your take on, now that you've been homeschooling for a while now, what is your take on your children and their socialization and being able to interact with other kids their age?
Well, that socialization, that's a $100 word right there, or the $1 million word. That is probably, I'm guessing that is the biggest buzzword that people on the other side of homeschooling, the problem, that they have, the problem that they have with this. And it was one of mine too. The homeschool or the socialization issue, you've got to send your kid to school so they can be in a room with 20 or 30 other kids their age so they can learn how to behave with kids their age. And here's the thing. Your kid's going to get socialized, but there's bad socialization going to happen there too. You know what I mean? It's not all like it's a good thing. And I don't know whose idea it was that putting 20 or 30 kids of the same immature age together so that they can, feed off each other and just with the peer pressure, and that desire to be liked and all that. I think it's a bad mix, but it can be good or bad. But here's the thing with homeschooling. The parents are really in control of how much socialization your kids have. And you have, as a parent, more control over what kind of quality of socialization your kids are going to have. So in our experience, it's not a problem at all because, we go to church on Sundays and Wednesdays. The kids, they're with their class. They're with kids their own age. They're working on stuff. We're part of a homeschooling group here in Ohio that arranges field trips and activities so we can go on those when we want to.
Yes, I'm gonna interrupt you for a minute. And I did not realize this, but they're called, I believe, co-ops. There are co-ops in each area that you live out there that just oversee any kind of homeschooling. Not really oversee, but they're there to help you.
Well, a co-op is something you can join or you don't have to. I'm part of Classical Conversations. I'm not sure they call themselves a co-op. It's sort of like a curriculum, but it's you pay tuition, and then even in our homeschooling group, there's one or more other co-ops. They go by different names, and what it can be is now what I'm part of is actually like a national thing where you pay tuition and they have their own curriculum. They focus on classical memorization with a Christian perspective. But there are co-ops that are, I think, completely put together by homeschool parents, and homeschool parents who have the skills and the knowledge teach different skills in classes in that group. And then they probably, have some sort of fees that help cover what they need, or rent, because a lot of places or co-ops, can rent rooms at churches or whatever,
So it's a group of, it's usually run by parents. They get together with other families that homeschool. So you also get socialization from them also.
Right. And then there's, you put your kids in sports, and now, I don't know what it is like in every state, but in Ohio, your homeschoolers can be in public school sports. And, my kids are not. We live in a township. I'm not sure what's really available, but there's just down the road from me, across a different line, township line, is another family with homeschoolers, and her son plays in does I think football, and he's 10 years old. He does, I think, football and basketball, and their daughter is in cheerleading. I think they do all this with the public school, even though they've been homeschooled. I don't know if they ever were in public school. So you just have to find out what's available,
So there's plenty of activities out there to dispel the whole, oh my goodness, your kids are not going to be around kids their own age kind of myth out there. There are plenty of opportunities.
And if you can't find something that is official, quote unquote, do it and pull something together yourself. All it takes is a couple parents to get together with their kids and have a play date. You can do that at any age, go to the museum.
I know I've seen you take your kids to the Y for different things too. And the YFCA is an awesome resource for all kinds of different things.
Yeah, in the past we've done that. Right now, they do. I put them in homeschool swim at the Maslin Recreation Center, because the homeschool swim there is very affordable. It's $23 or $26 maybe per kid, and then they get free time in the aquatics area. And so then they do that with other homeschoolers, kids that aren't part of any other group that they know. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're just other homeschoolers. So
awesome. So there's plenty of resources out there. You just gotta get in your neighborhood and see what's available to you.
Right.
Who would you recommend going anywhere particular to get those resources?
Yeah, I have. If I put together a post on my blog at halloffamemoms.com. If anybody that's interested goes to my, and I put it in a chat room, but when I pull up when I pull up your chat room thing, it plays a double, the show is replaying for me, so it creates all this back noise.
Hon, go to the top of the page and hit the mute button on the radio show at the top. That'll take care of that for you.
Oh, okay. I'll try to do that. But if anybody goes to my blog, halloffamemoms.com, the very top post will have the Prepper Chicks logo, and I put together a list of resources on there.
I'll drop that in the chat room right now. I think I just did it a moment ago.
Oh, okay.
But we'll redrop it. But again, her website, www.halloffame, HALLOFF, of hallofffamemoms.com. And she's got a ton of information on there that you can get your hands on, different websites that you can go to for homeschooling resources, which is awesome. Thank you for putting that together. It's been a big help. I also you'd sent me a link for another website to check out the laws, the homeschool laws within different states. And
that's in here too. That's on this post also.
Awesome, because you definitely need to cover your back on that kind of stuff and know what's available in your state.
Well, and if you for anybody wanting to get started, on that post, when you go to my blog, I have a section that says, where do I start? And in there I have a link that says homeschooling laws and legalities state by state. This is put together by a different website, but this particular website I'm linking to has been a lot of help for me when I was doing my homeschool research. And anything you read by someone else, always, if it's about state laws, double check with your state, but you can follow those links to your state laws, find out what you're allowed to do. As far as I know, homeschooling is legal in all 50 states. I did, maybe a couple years ago, I did a post, and I have it linked in here also, called What You Should Know About the History of Homeschooling in America. And, that there's some interesting things in that too, but just know what your state, wants from you, and don't give them anything more than they than they ask for in the law. Sometimes, I'm under the impression that sometimes, there's people are just sinners and you'll get bad eggs out there. And there are some people that they want more control or power than they're supposed to have or that they've been given by the state. So don't feel like you've got to give them more information than they're required to get from you.
And they will deceive you, I've noticed.
Some people will.
Yes, they will. I know I had a meeting, last week with our school system over here, and, just real fast, my son has a health issue that sometimes he misses more school than our school system over here would prefer. Well, of course, they lose money when my child does not have his butt firmly planted in their seat in their building, and they don't like that. And next thing you know, I'm having to report to some kind of probation officer with the court system because of it. And they are dictating to me, and told me basically that as a parent, I do not have the right to decide whether or not my child is well enough to go to their public school system or go to school that day. Mm-hmm. And, I have a problem with that. I gave birth to this child. I'm an educated woman. I can make that decision for myself, and we've consulted with a physician. So it's not like I'm making this, decision lightly. So we went to talk to the probation officer about this whole thing, and now they've decided that they're going to work with us on this. And the first thing that they tell you things without, if you don't look into it yourself, you do not know that there's all these other resources out there that's available to you. Yeah. Such as there's a form now that we can get filled out by the physician stating that, yes, sometimes my child does not have to go to the doctor every time he's not feeling well. We know what the issue is, and it's okay for him not to go to school without seeing a doctor. Because before, they wanted us to, every time he missed school, he would have to go to a doctor to get a piece of paper signed to say that, yes, he was treated by the physician that day. And that's a copay if you have insurance every time. If not, it's still money out of your pocket just to have a piece of paper signed by someone that the school seems to think that they're, fit over top of the parents' rights to decide what to do with the child. It's like they leave the parents completely out of the equation whatsoever. I have a problem with that. This is my child. It's not the doctor's child. It's not the school's child. It's my child. So, needless to say, the last time we had a meeting, I threatened to pull my child out of school and homeschool. And all of a sudden, about face, they turn and say, "Oh, let's talk about this. Let's try and work this out." But I'm going down the homeschool path quite fast at this point. So, as a parent, there are many reasons why someone would pull a child out of a public school system or not enter them at all. How would, if I'm brand new to this, and I know you've got stuff on your website, maybe you can talk about how you made that decision and how you got started and getting over the guilt factor, that brainwashing that they've instilled in us over the years, to take that right back as a parent.
Well, first, it begins with realizing that it is your right, and that by law, this is your right, it's protected. And, in any area, if you know the facts and you know that what you're doing is right, regardless of any guilt feeling, you just have to shut the door on that guilt feeling and focus on the facts. We can't live our life by how we feel or let our feelings dictate, our choices in life. So in your situation, or like in mine, Okay, so like I let my son finish kindergarten because I still wasn't ready. I started my homeschool research around January of that year, and then he finished kindergarten, and I still was so afraid to commit. I felt like I couldn't commit. And finally summer was here, and I was still stewing on it, and I just was like, I got to do this. I just have to make a decision. So I did. And I already had friends. I knew people in real life friends apart from, Facebook, just Facebook people or bloggers, who were homeschooling. So I was able to go to them and ask them, well, what do I need to do? And all this kind of stuff. So they would send me the link to the form I needed to fill out or tell me what they do. So,
well, it does seem from someone on the outside, it seems very overwhelming. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I got to have a room ready. What kind of school books do I have to have? What kind of paperwork do I have to turn into the state just to take my kid back away from them?
Right. So here's the thing. And I know you don't want me to get into homeschooling methods in this show, right? You just want to talk about the basics of getting your feet wet, right?
Just so everybody out there knows, Tracy's going to be back on probably a couple more shows so we can get more in depth in things.
So what I did, I'm in Ohio, and Ohio has some forms. They want some information, and I'm okay with that. Ohio, I think, falls in the middle of whether the states are lenient or strict. I don't think Ohio's strict, but Ohio, like in Texas, I'm thinking you don't even have to tell them you're going to homeschool, but but in Indiana, I checked for you a little bit. It looks like you might even have more freedom than I do, but I'm okay with this because it's accountability. So what they want to know, I filled out the form. They just wanted an idea of if I was prepared or not. They wanted to know what I was planning to do and for a curriculum and that. And even the library, putting down the library was fine, but they wanted to know information. So I answered their questions, took it down in person to our local superintendent's office here in town. And whenever I do that, just because and here's one thing I do recommend: if you are serious about considering homeschooling, find some homeschooling groups like Yahoo groups, online support groups, because those people are asking questions and there's people there who will answer them. And so here's some of the things that I learned. Don't give a state more than you legally have to as far as information goes, because there are people out there who will want power and control. Then go in person or send your information certified mail so that in case there is somebody on that end who is dishonest and controlling, they can't say, well, we never got it, and then you get in trouble. I always take my stuff in person, just to be safe. And then when I take it in there, and I've never had a problem with the people down there. Even one last year, I think it was, I didn't give them enough information, and I just called them and I talked to whoever I needed to talk to and gave it to them over the phone, and it was fine and we were good. But so go in person, pick up the packet that you need or the information, deliver it in person or certified mail as it's been recommended. I've seen it recommended. When I take it in person, I ask the secretary just to sign a little piece of paper saying I dropped it off. I do that every year. So she'll sign something saying I dropped this off. And then, when all that paperwork gets through their end of the wash, then they send me a letter saying my kids are officially excused from compulsory attendance. Now, it's my right to homeschool, but I have to get them officially excused from public school, or they're not even in a private quote unquote school. They're being homeschooled. So and in Ohio, like I think you have to have at least a high school diploma to homeschool your kids, or maybe even a GED. If you never finished high school, you might have to either get special permission from the superintendent, or you can always have somebody else homeschool your kids also. My youngest sister was homeschooled, and my mom had a teacher tutor her, I think for years. My mom has a high school diploma, or she has a high school, as a high school graduate, but we had a neighbor who was a teacher or a tutor, and it worked out nice that, she could help my sister in those younger years. So those are some of the options you have to look into, but I would definitely recommend you get into some state or local, wherever you are, homeschool groups, where there are knowledgeable people who have already walked this path and who will guide you along that way.
Awesome. So go online, get all the information for the laws in your particular state, and you can go to Tracy's website, halloffamemoms.com, to get links to the various websites out there that she's got a nice grouping together of websites that you can get all that information from. At that time, research your particular state and you're going to have to comply with what their rules are in order to get your child removed from public school system.
Yeah, and if your kid's in public school right now and you say there's issues and you need to pull them out, as far as I understand, at least here in Ohio, you can pull your child out anytime. And I don't know, you just, again, check with your state and find out what they need to know so that, there's no truancy issues, getting in your way. So
now, a brief overview, because I don't know how far in depth you want to go with this, but let's say my child, he's 13 years old, he's in the 7th grade. How will I know what resource materials I need in order to be able to teach him what he needs to learn at that age level? And where would I get that information from?
Okay. One thing that I've done along the way is I would just get online and I would like Google or do some sort of search for what should my is in, and I would use that as a checklist just to help me have something to track. Now I don't teach according to the public school schedule. Like I don't worry about what they're, especially with this crazy Common Core stuff out there. I am not teaching.
That's a whole other show.
yeah. I'm not going down that path. I teach my kids, I want them to be tracking along where they should be to a degree, but you know what? I teach my kids what I want to teach them, or, maybe they wouldn't get taught.
A lot of the truth, if you actually dig into it, a lot of the textbooks that our kids are using out there and the information that they're being taught in school is not always accurate. That's been proven over and over and over again. And you bring up a very good point. And we will dig into this on another show because we just wouldn't have time for it. The stuff that our kids are learning in school, such as this Common Core curriculum that's rolled out to a lot of the states now. I know there are some states that are removing themselves from it. Indiana happens to be one of those that's kind of backed away from it. But still, I've seen where my child has brought homework home, and we've done the homework, gotten the correct answer. He's taken it back to school and been marked off for it because our children are being brainwashed into completing an assignment in exactly the correct steps that school wants them to do it in, as opposed to being able to think outside the box and come up with solutions on their own.
Yeah, and that's just scary too. I've heard stories of, and I don't know if it was always Common Core, but stories where, like a teacher, it was my uncle in another state. It was a couple years ago maybe. He mentioned that, somebody had come home with some math assignment, and whoever the dad was, took the assignment back to the teacher and said, I don't know, I don't understand this. You're going to have to teach my kid. And the teacher started crying because she didn't understand it either.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. How many ways do we have to worry about how to get 2 + 2 or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And sometimes and I've seen this, sometimes 2 + 2 does not equal 4 anymore, which is even crazier. But you start going back the rabbit trails on who is the person benefiting from all of the stuff that's going on out there, and you would be shocked on who's actually getting slipped some money in their back pocket because at the expense of our children.
Well, Common Core, I'm under the impression that that's the whole reason. Well, I won't say the whole reason because the federal government, I think it's more than just money, but I think for the states, the reason they're doing Common Core is so that they can get more money.
Yeah.
But they're seeing, but I'll tell you, of all the stuff that's out there that I read, I mostly am seeing almost completely the stuff that I come across seems to be negative on Common Core. People don't like it. Parents don't like it.
Even teachers don't like it.
Yeah, I would think. But so it just tells me that, you know how you can read a lot of stuff that's controversial, and you'll see maybe 50% yay and 50% nay, but it almost seems to me that it's almost all no way. And who in their right mind put this stuff together? And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, you start going, like I said, tracking back through Common Core, and you end up at Bill Gates. So, it depends on your, thought process there, but that's always a bad sign in my book, is when it gets tracked back to the money man.
Well, let me throw this in real quick, because we have a watchdog, so to speak, here in Ohio on this whole, for freedom of education here in Ohio. And his name is Mark Stevenson, and he has, him and maybe another friend have a website called Ohioans for Educational Freedom. And he sent me a post. He's part of our big homeschooling group, that I'm involved with, or that I'm a member of. And he sent me a post last night, and I got it up on my blog. It's called The Problem with Common Core and What You Can Do About It. And I mean, he just understands this stuff at a level I just can't. But he's right in the mix, and he's involved politically, and has a political interest in this. And he's a homeschooling veteran dad. They have like 6 kids, I think, and they've got one more maybe yet to get out of the house, or through homeschooling. But anyways, it's right there on my post, and I've linked to it in that other one, if anybody wants to kind of get a deeper idea of what's going on there. But yeah.
Well,
back to what you're saying.
Yeah, I want to, two questions I have for you. Then, we're about 20 minutes out right now. 2 questions, and then let's wrap it up real fast and let people know kind of a brief overview of exactly what they have to do. 2 things I've observed. The first thing, anytime my child goes back to school, we go now in August, back to school, and then usually after Christmas break, and then after spring break, my child always gets sick. It's like I could set my clock by it. Now, I've been at the school numerous times, and you walk in, and it is so warm in there. It is pathetic. Our child now has to take, I think the last count was he has to take 6 boxes of Kleenexes with him as part of his school supplies, plus hand sanitizer, because it's a breeding ground for all the sickness out there. You lock, umpteen number of kids in a room that is entirely too warm, it becomes a festation of just yuckiness out there. And they don't have the best hygiene. They're wiping their noses on their sleeves and coughing without covering their mouths, and, the whole 9 yards. Since you've begun homeschooling and your kids are not, how often are they ill?
Not often. And I will say this, when my oldest was in kindergarten, that year he got strep throat twice. The only 2 times in his life he had strep throat. He got it in December and April, and of his kindergarten year, and I think it was during that year he also picked up fifth disease, which is just like a rash thing, but still. And you know what? We don't live in a bubble. My house is not spotless. When my kids were younger, we'd go to McDonald's, and up until they're just growing out of those playlands. So it's like we expose them to germs, we expose them to people, and but it was associated with when he was in that school environment that he was getting sick. And I'll say this: back when even though I had been through all my years of schooling, when I was working in the daycare environment, I was sick like nonstop, even with antibiotics,
Like one of the biggest complaints I hear of teachers is how often that they're sick when they're in those environments. And try as they might, I don't see how you could not cross-contamination a whole group of kids in that kind of, in that situation. I mean, it's just a breeding ground for that. You add warm temperatures to it. And it's funny because when I was growing up, we used to make fun because to save money, our school, we all swore that our school would run the air conditioner in the wintertime and the heater in the summertime. But nowadays, you go in these big, fancy, multi-million-dollar schools, and it is so warm in there. I don't even see how the kids can stay awake half the time. They don't clean the water fountains. at all.
That's not good.
No. So, it's quite of an interest to me is how often kids that are homeschooled and taken out of those environments get sick compared to the ones that are herded into those kind of situations. Mm-hmm. So can I ask you real fast, because I opted out of vaccinations for my child. It seems like every year they're adding more and more and more and more to the list. Now, am I anti-vaccine altogether? Probably not 100%. But when we continually add vaccines onto our long list of things, I finally said, I've had enough. I'm not doing this anymore. And digging into some of the components that are in vaccines and whatnot, quite concerned about that. So we opted out. We did the whole religious exemption thing, sent the form to the school, didn't get any flack over it, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But homeschooling and vaccinations, are there any rules there that you're aware of, or is it just?
No, I think that's just a personal preference. Like my kids get I've done the childhood vaccinations, and the boys and I have only done, I think, the flu shot maybe once or twice, because they were preemies in, let's see, when Jack was born, Brendan was about 2, and Jack was just on the borderline of possibly needing those RSV or some kind of shot to protect him from that. And those were going to be expensive. So instead of doing that, we just went and got a flu shot, and we were all fine. But I don't really believe in the flu shot, and I won't do it. And I don't get it for my boys. We only did it like once or twice, and they're 9 and 7 now. And we don't have a problem with the flu. Now we may get it one day, but I just don't buy into,
right. You change your appetite, the foods that you eat. Your body can heal itself if you allow it, if you give it the right components to be able to do that.
Well, and here's the other thing is that, yeah, they may give you a flu shot that takes care of one strain, but who's to say there's not going to be 3 more strains this year? Yeah. I don't want to take the risk of my kids getting any sickness. We'll take our chances by just trying to be healthy and that sort of thing, But now, as far as like the mumps and the measles and that, yeah, we do that. And I've wondered, is that a good idea? Should I not? But then, what? I did read a post shared by a lady who grew up in a very health conscious, like vegetarian. I don't know if it's vegetarian.
I read
but like,
that. Yeah, I read
did
that
you read it? And she had like every illness that you get vaccinated for. And she talked about the downside. She grew up in this supposedly pristine environment of avoiding vaccine, and yet she went through, I think, mumps and measles and all this. And I think there is something to the point that the reason why a lot of people don't get it is because there's so many people vaccinated. But again, it's a personal preference, and I know you'll find pros and cons on all that. Yeah,
which is a whole nother show in itself. Yeah. Right. But I just I find it interesting once you take your child out of the environment of the public school system of how less sick they are. But the other question I have, and this was a huge concern of mine, is my husband works and I work. And, when you think about homeschooling, you get the notion that you have to have a separate room in your house, chalkboard up there. You've got books, you've got your curriculum that you're going to be teaching. And it's a 9 to 5 kind of a thing like they do right now. But talking to you about this, can you talk about that subject that, yes, even if you both parents work outside the home, that you still would be able to homeschool? Yes,
you can. There's a family in our homeschool group even. I was just thinking about this today. They have a farm and the wife works. She works outside of the home. I don't know if it's a couple days a week or if it's full time, but they homeschool there. They have like 4 young kids and they homeschool. And I've read online single parents homeschooling, working parents, maybe a single working parent even homeschooling. The nice thing with homeschooling is it can happen anywhere, anytime. If it's a husband and wife situation, and the husband can do stuff with the kids at home. You don't have to have a classroom. You don't have to have a textbook. You don't have to clock in and clock out.
So if your child isn't a morning person,
yeah, you don't have to have school.
You don't have to, like my child right now gets on the bus at 7 o'clock, which means he's up at 5:30, 6 o'clock at the latest. He is not a morning person, and he struggles through this, and it takes him a while to get awake by the time he does get to school. Hopefully he is awake by that time. But as a homeschooler, he could resume a regular sleep schedule, and you could even go into, say you work during the day, and I could be homeschooling him in the evenings, as opposed to thinking you have to go by the same time frame that the school actually does.
Right. And now there is a, just to be clear on this, there's traditional homeschooling, which I do, which I'm in control of the whole show pretty much. Or there's, nowadays, this seems to be pretty big. There's, public school at home, and it's done online. Now, I don't know, now you have to follow the public school's curriculum and whatever, however they do that. I've never done that, so I don't know, but I don't think it's where you have to do it during the day. You know what I mean?
I did check into that as an alternative form, for my son. And yes, you have a lot more freedom doing that, but there are some, classes that you take. They actually give you a computer, a laptop for your child, and he does have to take some classes on there, which he does have to be available when the teacher is on with that particular class.
Okay.
But if he's only taken one or two classes like that, it could be in the afternoon, and that's all he would need to be required as for time-wise. So he could do the rest of his classes in the evening or even on the weekends or whenever. They just give you a basis of this is what he needs to accomplish this week. If he gets it done in 2 days, then fine. He's got the rest of the week off, or he could do it on the weekends or whenever. So a lot more freedom, but there's still, even with that, you still have to follow some guidelines with the public school system.
Right. And what I like about Ohio is that I don't have to test or grade. And believe me, I take advantage of that. So, and it's nice. It's very freeing. My kids, none of us have to stress out about grades. We don't have to stress out about passing a test, and you don't have to worry about teaching to a test, which is another big complaint about public school is that is this thing that people feel like they've got to teach. The kids have to learn so that they can pass these tests that have to happen. You know what I mean?
Well, they're on a timeline, bam, we've got to learn this and get it over with. And then they test them, and either they pass or fail and they move on to the next thing, because the school has a curriculum they have to get through for the year. Whereas in homeschool, you have a lot more freedom there.
Yeah. And I don't even have to go by the public school's curriculum. So
instead of reading about the Rocky Mountains or Yosemite Park, you can actually take your child to that actual place. It can be part of a vacation, yes, but it also would that count as part of their schooling? Yes.
Yep. Here, at least here in Ohio, educational time, we have to provide our kids with like 900 hours of educational time during the school year. So, and we don't have to log that, but educational time, as far as I'm concerned, is educational DVDs, field trips, experiments, anything like that exposes them, even going to church. They're learning Bible, they're learning history, they're learning, Well,
there's a friend of mine, their father is a truck driver, and he does cross country. So every once in a while, he will take a child with him, and they stop along the way. It's kind of like driving through your, history book. Yeah. And they'll stop along the way to visit sites that a kid in a public school system might never see. They read about it in a textbook, but now you've got the freedom to get your child out there, to get your child to see the world, which I think is very important, because you realize that there are other humans out there. And that there's a whole world of history. And don't forget, a lot of our history books are written by the people that won the war. So they can be a little biased. So you can actually go visit places that a lot of people don't get to see, which I think is quite fascinating.
Yeah, and not all kids learn, not everybody learns the same way. Like what you were saying about your son being tired. I remember going to school and I'd be tired. I just was not a morning person, and I'm still not a great morning person. And, didn't matter going to school didn't change that. It was just a part of who I am. And textbooks, boring, dry. I still, there's things that I've come to understand later in life that I was being taught back in high school that didn't make sense to me. And the nice thing here is that the parent has the freedom to know their child and to teach them according to how that child can best learn. And I want my kids to learn. I don't want them just to do school
pencil whip
all the time.
Yeah, because that's a lot of our kids just pencil whip what they're learning in school anyways. They don't get the foundation of it. It's just to get the teacher through the curriculum that they have to in order for the school to receive the funds that they get.
Well, and the other thing that's really nice about homeschooling is you get to know your kid. I didn't get married till I was 32, so I didn't have my kids till I was like 35, in my mid-30s. And I just remember looking back, like when I worked in the daycare, preschool environment, I remember thinking, these kids, and I know there's some parents there, it's a single home, they have to work and this kind of thing, but these kids probably spend more time with us in this daycare than they do of their waking hours than they do with their own parents. And, just knowing how much of my life I felt like maybe was being wasted, just thrown down the can because I had to work as a single person, and when I got married and I had my kids, and we were still in a situation where, and we still are, we don't make a lot of money, but we find ways to work it out. And the Lord's been really good to show us different ways where we can, have some income coming in, cut out what we need to cut out here. It's a path of sacrifice as a parent. You sacrifice, you have to give up your me time, a lot of it. You can't, spend money on all kinds of things, that you maybe did once before. And homeschooling doesn't have to cost us a lot of money, but, you might have to stop working and just let it go on one income, or you might just have to, juggle that work schedule with your husband. But
I think families need to stop treating, Jimmy brought it up in the chat room a while ago at the beginning of the show, people need to stop treating their children as accessories. It breaks my heart, these parents that get on Facebook or friends or people that I know, and they are so excited about when their kids go back to school because they don't have to deal with them anymore. They get why have them?
Yeah.
These are people. These are humans here that need our foundation, our love, our, education, our tutoring, to make them great adults.
And that window of time closes quickly.
Yes.
Our kids grow up very fast.
Yes. So, and I'm, like a lot of people out there right now, are concerned about our rights in general. And I'm not just talking about, with the Second Amendment rights and all that. Our rights with our children are being taken away from us faster and faster each day. And we need to do something about that. And it's a huge concern of mine. And like I said, my oldest son is 24 years old. Excuse me. And I did not see as many of the issues back when he was in school as I do now with a 13-year-old. But I am and at first I thought maybe it was just the fact that we moved from Ohio to Indiana. And it was just a different school system. But my daughter attended school here for a little while, and we did not have the same issues. But I am hugely concerned with digging into this and finding out all the issues that are going on, not just with us, but with many, many families out there. If you read, there's some international cases that are going on pertaining to our parental rights. And we need to stand up, because if not, we're going to lose all of our rights as parents, and our children will become wards of the state, whether we want them to or not. We're just going to be the ones that happen to give them food occasionally.
Well, and I'll tell you, it really needs to start at the grassroots level. And we just had an episode, I know we're running out of time, but just a few weeks ago, we had this situation come up where a senator in Ohio and a family who suffered a tragedy, a broken family where one parent took the child out of public school to homeschool, but ended up the boyfriend of this person beat this child to death. This senator from Ohio and this family got together and they put a bill together and the bill was just in the beginning of the works, but once the homeschooling community in Ohio got wind of it, we put the fire to the fan. And within 4 days, I think, of it going public, the senator said, we've decided to withdraw the bill, and I will not put homeschoolers in any other bills. Because what they were going to do is they're trying to get it so that homeschooling families, if you wanted to homeschool, you were going to have to be interviewed by Children's Protective Services,
Yes.
and then CPS would decide whether or not you should be allowed to have the right to homeschool.
That is insane.
It
That
is insane.
insane.
It is. And you know what? There are people that are watching this, and when this senator said, okay, I'm going to pull it, and it's like, okay, yay, but the people who have been around this block for years, one or more of them were like, look, we don't trust her yet. We just don't know. We're going to follow this and make sure that it really does happen. So, because the people watch the politics of these politicians, and they know the direction they're coming from, and they don't trust them. So, what happened is when Mark Stevenson, this is where I got it, I guess, from Mark Stevenson sharing this with the Ohioans for Educational Freedom. I guess people started emailing and calling, maybe inundating their office. And I know that I got involved online talking to the family's their Facebook page they had for this bill, and the senator, and not just me, but people were telling them, look, this is a bad bill, and this would not have stopped this child from being killed. You're going about it wrong. You need to leave us out of this. It's not right.
Well, I've heard horror stories of these people coming in to visit homes at homeschool and see something like, I think the worst one I heard was there's a bag of chips on the counter, and all of a sudden now these parents are being blamed for not giving the proper diet to their child.
And that's the problem. People on every level, I don't care where they're from or what kind of degree they have, people are sinners. And if there's a control issue and a power thing there, they can use their own opinion and biases to get you in trouble with the law. And then you bring in all this stress and unnecessary difficulty into families and bring in disruption when it didn't even need to be there.
Yeah, I would completely agree. So we're down to about 2 minutes. So really fast, how would someone find you if they wanted to get more information from you on this?
Well, I'm very easy to find. My blog, halloffamemoms.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Pinterest. And all those links you'll find at my blog. If you look in my sidebar, I'm on Instagram. I'm not hiding. I'm out there. I'm on Google Plus. You can get you can subscribe to my blog for free to get my updated posts. I'm on YouTube,
Okay, I dropped your website again. But
okay.
We're going to have you back. Lots of great information. Tracy, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Lori.
You have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.